You're listening to the Behind Ears podcast, because everybody does Disney differently. The Behind Ears podcast crew would like to thank the following sponsors for their generous support. If you have a little one and you're going to Walt Disney World, you're going to need a stroller. I'll tell you what, Kingdom is the place where you want to look into. I'll tell you, I've destroyed my fair share of strollers while at Walt Disney World, and those things are not cheap. But getting something from KingdomStrollers.com, they'll be able to help you pick out the perfect stroller for you. And the nice part is that because they're a Disney preferred provider, they'll be able to drop it off and pick it up right from your Disney resort at no extra charge. So if you don't want to necessarily destroy your stroller in the process and you want to have a great Disney vacation with your little one, contact KingdomStrollers.com and they'll set you right up. That's KingdomStrollers.com. Hey everybody, it's Mr. Chris, and I got to tell you about Expedition Roasters. Listen, I'm a pretty big coffee drinker, just like a lot of you are, but these people have got coffee right. Their coffees are made from selectively sourced premium and specialty grade Arabica beans. They provide the absolute best flavor and aroma, and select roast even come directly from a single estate farm for a truly perfect cup that is never bitter. They've got awesome Disney-inspired flavors such as Roundhouse Roast, Route 66, Skipper's Brew, Dark Side Roast, Redhead Rum, and one of my favorites, Bob Slatter's Brew. Listen, if you want to have the taste of Disney in every cup, give them a try today. Expeditionroasters.com, and Behind the Ears podcast listeners gets an extra 20% off your first order by using the coupon code EARS20. That's right, EARS20. And you can find them over at Expeditionroasters.com. Brew your happy place. Do you want to save around 40% off Disney's prices for deluxe on-property accommodations? Contact DVC-rental.com. They help out Disney Vacation Club owners rent out points that they're not going to use. These points mean savings for you on your next trip at Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Vero Beach, Florida, and Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. The DVC member books everything in your name, just like any other reservation. And if you ever decide that you want to become a DVC member, you can check out our sister company, BuyAndSellDVC.com. As a licensed realtor, they sell DVC contracts for members at a savings of 30 to 40% off Disney's prices. And if you're looking to sell your contract, BuyAndSellDVC.com has one of the industry's lowest commissions at only 6.5%. Again, that's DVC-rental.com for your rental needs, and BuyAndSellDVC.com to buy or sell into the Disney Vacation Club at a large discount. And make sure you tell them that the Behind Ears podcast crew sent you. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind Ears podcast. Hello, everybody, and we really appreciate everybody who joined us tonight for our live recording session. And you know what? I know that we have every once in a while some technical difficulties. We sometimes start a little bit later. You know what? Someone told me, hey, they want to watch some of the Christmas specials going on. That's okay. I just gave them a little bit extra time to finish up what they're watching and set that DVR for the next episode, because you know that you want to watch this live. You know you want to interact. Besides, some of those Christmas specials you have seen over and over and over again. I don't even know what's playing tonight, but I've got my DVR all set up. All right, everybody. Tonight we've got a real special episode. We have got Scott from DVC-rental.com, and he's going to be joining us. We're going to talk about all sorts of things DVC. Scott, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I am just excited to be here, especially after overcoming some of the odd technical difficulties that I would love to say they're outside of my control, but I know I'm not telling the truth if I say that. So, well, you know what? I'm really glad to have you on. It's been a real crazy couple months ever since I know since last time we saw each other was over at the Indy Disney Meet down in Indianapolis, and that was an awesome time, just be able to sit back and chat with you and be as well, and just to kind of get to know what you guys do. And you know, the thing is that DVC rentals as well as DVC ownership is actually a relatively hot topic. It seems like more often than not, we actually have many of our listeners ask many different questions in regards to that. And I thought that not only would we talk a little bit about it, but probably answer some of the questions from our viewing audience tonight. So first off, just as a general let's get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about DVC-rental.com and buyandselldvc.com.
Sure. I started DVC-Rental a little over 8 years ago. I had a full-time job at the time when I was doing it. Over the past couple years, though, I was able to leave the job. I had to focus on this because it just got definitely way too busy. We have 6 employees who work for us, all really great people. A lot of them are on Facebook and they're around all the time. Then 3 years ago, we started Buy and Sell because we'd become so entrenched with the DVC people, and we have lots of customers and we have DVC members that we were constantly getting asked if we also sold contracts. So we decided to create the company. We brought on our real estate broker, B. Thaxton, and it's kind of all just taken off additionally from there.
Well, that's really cool. And I didn't realize that you've been in business for 8 years. That's a pretty good run so far.
Yeah, it's been a great run. It's very, very busy. It's been an interesting run, to say the least. When I first started, I never thought it would get this big, and it's kind of just blossomed into something that we never expected, but we're very grateful for.
That's excellent. And it's one of those cases where I have to admit, a number of years ago, before I became a DVC member myself, the interesting part is that it was a rental of DVC points that really got me hooked on becoming a DVC member. And it was one of those cases where, now mind you, this is a number of years ago. This is probably, now that I'm thinking about it, 2006. There we go. 2006. That's when it was. And it was one of those cases where I needed a place for 6 of us to stay comfortably. And it included not only my family of 4, but my mom and my mother-in-law, also lovingly known as the Moms. And I needed a place that I could actually have all of us in one room comfortably at a reasonable cost. And back then, there weren't too many companies such as yours that you can safely rent points. That you actually had someone that kind of acted as the coordinator between renter and rentee. And I ended up having to rent points from someone whom I had no idea who it was. And while the transaction went well, let's face it, I was kind of a little bit of a nervous wreck that entire time. And it really, that was a lot of money, even though it was one night. And I don't know. It kind of put a weird taste in my mouth. But afterwards, I was like, oh yeah, I so want to become a DVC member. So kind of get us started a little bit. There are some people that I know in one of our previous conversations. In fact, during our last episode, we were helping a listener actually plan their trip, and they were talking about going into a deluxe room this time. Normally they stayed at values, and it was one of those cases where I brought up renting DVC points. I was wondering if you can possibly just, for our audience's sake, kind of go through the general process of what someone would have to do to find out if renting DVC points is good for them.
Sure. It's much simpler than most people imagine. Essentially, you just go to our website and you can have us check availability for you. There's no way for you to check availability. Only a DVC member can do it. So essentially, you just tell us exactly when you're looking to go, what room you're looking for, what size room, and then we check to see if the room is available. If the room is available, we require it's a $200 deposit when you're ready to move forward, and you just have to send us all the information that Disney needs for the room, the names, address, phone number, all the basic stuff, because everything's going to be booked in your names and everything is going to show up on My Disney Experience as you're accustomed to. So then we just have the DVC member go out, they book everything for you, then we send you the contracts and the confirmation number, and the remaining balance is due within about 7 days because the DVC member is going to be waiting for their first payment from us, so we do have to get that to them.
Okay.
But it's relatively simple, and we have a points calculator right on our website, so you can always go on there and put in any set of dates, and it'll automatically calculate every single resort for you.
No, I think that's really good. It actually makes it really convenient for someone who's interested into seeing what would it take point wise, and therefore, of course, it translates into a dollar value for a pretty typical vacation. They could run a lot of scenarios right then and there to kind of make a determination of whether or not, staying at a particular resort is going to be for them, but also compare it with some of their other options, such as moderates and values. And I really do think that they're gonna see some pretty significant differences along those particular those costs, because it's all about that money. What are some? I guess the best way of putting it is that, what do you think that some of the misconceptions are that people have when considering renting DVC points? I mean, because some people probably don't understand exactly what DVC is, and they think that it's something a little less than Disney-ish type of thing, because it is a timeshare. What do you think some of the the more, I'll say, interesting questions that you get that guests really need to kind of be comforted in knowing that everything is going to be okay?
I think the main thing is that you kind of already just hit on it, is a lot of people don't realize that you're staying on Disney property. It's a Disney resort, so you still get Magical Express. You can still book tickets. You can still book the dining plan. Everything is the same. You're going to be treated the same exact way. I've had a couple people say, what happens if the people before me don't change the sheets? It's not like you're going to somebody's house. It's a Disney hotel room. So, when you check in, mousekeeping is going to have already been there. You check in at the front desk. It's not like it's somebody's place where they've accidentally left a sandwich in the fridge. I mean, it's a regular Disney resort. You're just getting 40-50% off of Disney's prices for the same rooms.
Yeah, it's not an Airbnb, everybody. It's not. It's not something that some kind of fly by night type of thing. And that's. I know it almost sounds like it would be a silly question, but I can actually see where some people might think it's a timeshare. They equate it to being more like renting out a condo, renting out a vacation home. And yes, we call it vacation homes and so on, but they are still being serviced by Disney and mousekeeping, and you are in essence getting a nice, clean, checked out room before you actually get there. That's kind of interesting. Now, some people were also asking if they would be able to still purchase a dining plan, or if there was ever a chance that the dining plan would be free for DVC rentals. And I know the answer. Right? They keep hearing it from me, but I'd like for you to basically I'd like for you to be able to elaborate on that, just to make sure everybody understands what's going on with that.
If I had $1 for every time I got that question over the years. But, I mean, you're still able to purchase the dining plan as you're staying on Disney property. However, to get the free dining plan, you have to book a non-discounted room directly through Disney. And because these rooms are already so heavily discounted, they don't qualify for any additional promotions.
Yeah, I think people really do have to understand. And the funny part is that there are even DVC members, and I see this all the time, that they kind of argue the concept of, why can't we ever get free dining? And then people usually end up having to. Yeah, people always have to say, well, you do realize that there is no such thing as free dining. There is this big misconception that free dining is always free when you end up paying full rack rate for those rooms. DVC members themselves we get other discounts, but at the same time, those discounts are not necessarily passed on to renters, but even we have to basically still pay for a dining plan if we so choose to do so. So clarify something for me and for the audience. As a person who rents points, there is one difference, I believe, as a DVC member that follows suit to a renter, and that is you don't necessarily get mousekeeping every day. And I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on that for our listeners tonight.
It's a little bit trickier because things have changed over the past year, but essentially when you stay on DVC points, if it's a 7-night or less stay, you get trash and towel on day 4. That your room already comes with towels in it.
Yeah,
we get that one a lot too. There are towels in the room, and then you get trash and towel on day 4. If it's 8 nights or more, you get a full cleaning on day 4, and then trash and towels again on day 7. However, with Disney's new policy where they do the room checks, a lot of times they come in and they'll say they're coming for trash and towels, but since since the incident in Vegas, Disney now goes and checks on rooms to make sure everything is copacetic in the rooms. So a lot of times they'll come in and you'll get multiple trash takeouts during the week as well, but that's not something you can always count on, because I've stayed a couple times recently where it was for several days and maybe they only showed up 1 or 2 of the days. But there's always trash facilities right there, so you can easily just take out your own trash if you want.
Right, and and even with that, with the trash and towel on the 4th day, I know that sometimes they'll come on like the 3rd day or something like that. But you are going to get something, under 7 days, you're going to get it a couple times. Under typical say 5 days, you're at least going to get it once. And like you said, there's always a trash facility that you can take things out, which I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's usually very nearby, and we try to keep things tidy anyway, because it's where we're living. So,
yeah. And I mean, to be honest, if you want to, Disney will allow you to pay extra for it as well. If you want a full cleaning, you can pay Disney a little bit extra, and they'll come and clean your room for you on specific days if you want. Or if you need extra towels, normally a housekeeper will give them to you, or you can buy a towel package. They may charge you for it, but it's like $8. But you're going to be saving thousands of dollars on your room, so it's not really a huge difference. And truthfully, I'll give you a quick story. I'm not a fan of mousekeeping coming in the room. When I went down there right after getting married, in the middle of the night, I guess from taking the flight, my fingers swelled up a little bit. So I took off my brand new wedding band, and put it on the table next to me. And I realized the next morning when I got to Epcot, I didn't have my wedding band on. So I actually called back to the hotel and said, my wedding band is in the room. Actually, I think at the time I wasn't 100% sure if it was I wasn't sure where it was. I took it off pretty much while I was sleeping. I said, please don't clean the room. My wedding band is somewhere in there. And they said, oh no, we won't clean it. It's not a problem. I got back to the room. They had cleaned my room. Wedding band was gone. Spoke to housekeeping. They were great. There were several mousekeepers shaking out laundry for me all over the place trying to find it. And eventually, like 2 hours later, there was a knock on the door, and the housekeeper who had cleaned our room came back with my wedding band in a Ziploc bag and said, oh, I had found this in your room, and I took it out for safekeeping. So I'm not a huge fan of them being in there. And when I go down to Disney, we've got our laptops with us. Our kids have our Kindles. We've got cameras. I normally, as soon as I get there, I put the Do Not Disturb sign on, because I really don't want them in my room, especially after that incident when it kind of just walked out on its own.
Yeah, I'm like you. I mean, I usually put my wallet into the safe, and I usually carry my key, or the safe key, on me. I usually put it in my camera, a zipped bag in my camera bag. And because I never had any problems. But, like you, I carry a laptop. My son usually has his Kindle. My daughter usually has her Kindle. It's just one of those things. It's not, I guess you could say, you hear a story like that and you'd like to think that, yeah, it was either an honest mistake or, the intentions were good. But at the same time, I still don't like people messing with my stuff. Yeah. And, the nice part is that John actually makes a mention here. Even the 1 bedroom bigger have washer and dryers to easily wash towels or your clothes. And the fact is that it kind of negates the idea of even needing, somebody to come into your room, even every few days. I'll just tell you my story. I'm addicted to 1 bedroom suites. Because
it's hard to go back to the studios after you stay in the 1 bedrooms, isn't it?
It really is, because it's one of those cases where, first off, we can pack a lot lighter, and because a lot of times we're staying for in excess of 6-7 days, and in fact, the longest trip we did was 10 days, and that's a lot of clothes to bring with you if you were going to have 1 pair of clothes per day. Not to mention that if you're going there in the summertime, the hard part to realize is that I'll change clothes in the middle of the day because you're so, let's face it, you're sticky. This is one of those things. We do wash clothes. And, the funny part is that when we first started going down to Disney, we said to ourselves, why would we ever want to do laundry in the middle of a vacation? And then it became clear. And we take that time to, do a little laundry, go down to the pool, relax. We do other things. It's not like we're sitting around doing laundry as our big thing. So yeah, it's one of those cases. Like some of our listeners here basically says, we make the beds and put our stuff away, lock things up in the safe. She strips beds and puts everything back that she's moved. Justin actually, if I think I'm addicted to 1-bedrooms, he's addicted to 2-bedroom suites. And Mary also says, love coming home with clean clothes. My wife, Mary, would totally, completely agree with you. Yeah, John also, hey, the washer and dryer works in the middle of the night. Yes, I totally agree. And that's actually something that, we have to realize as people who use DVC facilities. It's one of the nicest parts about it, not to mention you have a full kitchen. So I have to ask, if you stay at a 1-bedroom, do you actually take some time to cook some light meals or anything like that while you're in the room?
I normally don't. A lot of times we'll end up having breakfast or something like that in the room, but it's not like we're really doing too much cooking in the rooms when we go. But obviously we can, and we live so close now that it's not really a problem for us. We could very easily run anywhere to get food, or if we wanted to cook, very easily could run over to Publix and just hop back over and start cooking. But typically I don't cook too much in the rooms, but it's nice to know it's there. But I have cooked, omelets and scrambled eggs and stuff in the morning. I've done small cooking, but I've never sat there and, did a Thanksgiving dinner in there. But you can if you want to. If you're there for Thanksgiving, you've got a full oven.
It's kind of funny because I'm a big breakfast person and I cook big breakfast. And there was a time that we actually got groceries from Garden Grocer, had them delivered. And I had a pound of sausage, a couple tubes of biscuits and like a dozen eggs and some milk, orange juice, that sort of thing. And I would make egg and sausage biscuits for breakfast while everybody was waking up. And so by the time they were all ready, breakfast was ready. And there was even a couple of times, we're walking to the bus with, a breakfast sandwich in our hands. And it was really good. It was a whole lot cheaper than buying, a Disney breakfast, which,
absolutely,
you're talking $1 or $2 versus, let's face it, $7 or $8 for a biscuit sandwich.
And I'm sure yours was probably much better too, nice and fresh, and just made in a small batch. And I'm sure it was much cheaper and probably a lot better tasting.
I would think so.
Unless I'm giving you too much credit, I don't know.
Oh no. I if there's one thing I do well, I do breakfast well, and it was even to the point where in our luggage I actually brought a silicone baking pad. That
you don't mess around.
Oh no, not at all. Because because I didn't know quite what it was going to be like, and they had baking dishes or baking pans and stuff like that. So I just laid it down there, and it makes cleanup really a cinch. And so I put biscuits on there, and they just slide right off. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Get my bathing trunks in the soap hat, honey. We're cooking.
I love it. It's absolutely cool. Speaking of which, what's your favorite DVC resort?
It's always a tough one, and it's not a cop-out because they're all great resorts. But I have an affinity. I love Boardwalk.
Oh yeah.
Every resort has its kind of pros and cons, and Boardwalk is the one that just kind of holds like a special place in my heart. It's one of the first ones I visited. My wife's cousin was a DVC member, and we went to have lunch with him at dinner with him at Flying Fish. This is before I was an owner, when my wife and I first started dating, and we walked through the Boardwalk, the hotel. And it was Christmas time, and everything was decorated. I was like, this place is amazing. Oh my God. Like, can you imagine staying here? And, then we went and had dinner at Flying Fish, and, you're on the boardwalk, and it's just such an amazing atmosphere that I think that's really that solidified it for me. I mean, walking to Epcot's amazing. Walk or boat over to Hollywood Studios is great too. But just, I love the atmosphere right there. the magicians slash entertainers at night. My kids love them, and they somehow my one son always gets picked to be in the show. So I mean, there's so much great stuff going on. It's a great resort with great location, and I'm sure a lot of it is a little sentimental as well. But I absolutely love Boardwalk. The next one I've stayed at probably the most is Animal Kingdom.
Oh yeah, and Animal Kingdom is the one that we have stayed at the most since becoming members. Our first DVC stay as members was at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, and because we bought new. The interesting part is that we bought it at Saratoga. They threw us like the previous year's points plus a whole bunch of developer points, they called it. So we had just a gargantuan number of points. So during our first stay, my mom nor my mother-in-law knew that we actually bought into the DVC. We kept it a very close secret. And the interesting part is that we decided to get a grand villa over at Jumbo House.
Okay.
And so the funny part is that we walk in, and of course we walk down the corridor, and there's the double doors for the grand villa. My mom walks in, and she looks at me with this really stern look at her face and said, "What did you do?" I said, "What do you mean?" "You did something. What did you do to get a room bigger than your house?" Which at that time was very much the case. I mean, it was 2,300 square feet. I lived in a 1,300 square feet, ranch. And so we told them, I go, we bought into the vacation club, and this is a way of treating ourselves. And they're like, oh my gosh. And my mom had her own room. My mother-in-law had her own room. My son pretty much had his pick of wherever. My daughter just enjoyed it. And that was the one the Grand Villas at Jumbo House have a pool table in them too.
Yes, they do.
And I didn't know this. My mom was able to hustle me at pool. I was like, jeez, you learn something new every day about your parents. That was an interesting time. And so that was how we kind of started off. And ever since then, we've kind of stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge more than any other DVC resort, partially because the number of points per night is very reasonable for such a luxurious resort.
Yeah, I know.
And the animals is a big draw for my kids. And as silly as it sounds, when you stay over at Jumbo House and you're able to park like underneath the building, your car's not baking into sun. You're able to get to it when it's raining or this, that, and the other. It's actually very, very reasonable. So yeah, I would definitely say that's the one that I've stayed at the most, and I've really super enjoyed it. So I'm going to run through a couple things that some of our listeners actually posted over at the Behind Ears Podcast Facebook page as questions. Our friend Brian basically asks, for tonight, when we talk about number of points, he basically says, 100 points means nothing to me. Can you offer examples of what you can do for 100 points? And he's using that as an example. Mm-hmm. My way of putting it is, you kind of have to figure out where and when. But how do you explain that to a potential renter or even a potential resale buyer?
No, I mean, it's a great question. And as you know, it's a loaded one because Disney has so many different options that it can completely vary. 100 points could get you a week in a studio at Animal Kingdom or Old Key West. It depends on the room and time of year, but it can get you a week in a studio for one option or one night in that Jumbo House Grand Villa with the pool table. So it really depends. It could, 2, possibly maybe around 3 nights in a 2-bedroom, but a week. But again, during Christmas week, that might get you, 4 nights in a studio. Or as you know, Polynesian and Grand Floridian are going to be more points than Old Key West or Standard View at Boardwalk. So, I mean, it's really all over the place. And that's one of the great things about DVC is that there's so many different options at so many different price points, and you can use the points however you want. So if you want to do, 3 nights in a studio at one trip and then take the family for 7 nights in a 2-bedroom on another trip, you could do whatever you want because it's a points-based system and you're not locked in. So there's tons and tons of different options, and I feel bad because there's no real great example, but go to our website, dvc-rental.com, and click on that point calculator. Put in a set of dates, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, because it'll be all over the place.
Yeah, I think that really kind of makes a lot of sense, because the interesting part is that we have 160 points, and for the past several years we've pretty much borrowed points from a future year, the next year, in order to, just add on an extra day or something. We needed a few extra points. Even this year, we didn't start with our 160. We only had like 152 as an example. And
you didn't borrow that many, so that's good.
No, not this year. I mean, there have been times where we have started our use year at 120, or something like that. We're like,
Yeah, it's painful when you're starting getting, you're like, oh gosh, I've already borrowed everything. There's nothing here. What do I do?
Yeah, and we try not to do that, and we try to be very, very careful. But we also we do spread some things out. Like sometimes we'll stay at a value for a night or two before. It kind of depends on what our overall plans are. Even though we also have, we've kind of just banked. There have been times we've actually banked points too, so we had a few extra. Now the thing is that even with that 152 for this upcoming use year, which for us starts in March 1st of 2019, we do have 2 trips planned, and they're 2 different times of the year. They're both at Saratoga this time, which is a little bit odd because we usually try to mix it up. But my son picked our family trip location out this year, and my wife and I picked Saratoga because we also have some spa activities over at the Senses Spa over at Saratoga Springs, and it just makes it a lot more convenient. Not to mention we like to, when we do a trip just for the 2 of us, we're right by Disney Springs, a lot of different nightlife, that whole thing. The interesting part to it is because it is on a point system, you can do whatever you want. And I think there are 2 flaws that people make, put themselves in. They buy too few points, and they realize they're always borrowing, and they get add-on itis very quick. Yes. Or they buy,
a real thing.
And it's the real thing. It really is. Trust me. First couple of years, I was like, I think I could use another 50 and be happy. And then there are people who buy too many points, don't necessarily use them effectively, and they also have to pay the maintenance fees. But with the advent of people like you that have, companies that can help them, alleviate some of that, I'll say, burden of having extra points, renting out some of those points is a great way of offsetting your overall annual costs. And I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are, I don't want to say a lot, but there's a decent amount of DVC members that we have who are in the financial position where they're able to do that. And they purposely buy about double the amount that they're planning on using. And they rent out half of them, and that covers their maintenance fees for all of them for the entire year. So essentially, every year they're just going for free, besides the initial buy-in price, but they're not getting hit with any maintenance fees because half of the points that they bought are just covering all of everything for them. Right.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's a great way to offset it or make some money as well. Again, it's not encouraged by Disney. They don't want you doing it for business, but there are a lot of people out there who do own extra points specifically for that reason.
A very true statement. I mean, Disney tries to, they do frown on commercial rentals. And like you said, it's those people that have multiple contracts, thousands of points. They're renting them out because you can come out ahead by renting out your points. But I think, at least my opinion, if I was to do it, it would be mainly because I just can't go. I can't necessarily bank my points any longer, and maybe I just need to cover my costs. And
that's what the majority of people are. They're in that same exact situation as well. Or a lot of times, as you know, life happens. People get sick, people lose jobs. The kids don't want to go this year, or, God forbid, you don't want to go to Disney one year. There's a lot of people who say that I want to go to Italy this year, or I want to go to Ireland, or I want to take a cruise, and normally it's a lot better to end up renting out your points and getting the cash and then using the cash to book that trip.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do, especially with Disney cruises as well, because there's a lot of people. I mean, some people say, oh, yeah, I use my points all the time for cruises, but the fact of the matter is most members already know it's not really a good use of those points. Now, one other question Brian did ask, and I think this is really good, and I don't. It's been a while since I've looked this up, and maybe I'm pretty sure you would know right off the bat. I know that Disneyland has villas at the Grand Californian, which is by far the smallest of the DVC resorts around, because it only has like 50 rooms. But you can still use your points over at any of the Disneyland resort hotels, being the Disneyland Hotel and Paradise Pier, as well as the Grand Californian Hotel as well. Is that correct?
It depends. Essentially, what it means is that if you have a blue DVC member card, which means you either bought direct, or if you bought resale prior to March of 2011, I believe it was, you're able to use them for the Disney collection. It's not normally a great use of points. Same with the cruises. The way it works is Disney charges you a large amount to stay in non-DVC rooms. So if you want to stay, technically you can use your points to stay at a moderate. You can use it to stay at Paradise Pier or Disneyland Hotel. You can use it for cruises, but they discourage you because they charge a $95 transfer fee, and the points are much higher. So it's normally a really bad use of points. So some DVC members can do it, some can't. But normally you really don't want to go that route unless you really have to, because it's a lot more expensive. And, Grand Californian is the top, that's the top Disneyland resort. The other two technically fall as like a moderate and a value. And to stay in those rooms, they charge more points to stay in them than they do in the Grand Californian. Yeah. So it can be done, but if you can, you don't really want to do that.
Right, and that's kind of interesting the way you put it. I've stayed at the Disneyland Hotel. I could say, yeah, it was a good,
really nice hotel.
Really nice hotel.
It was a solid. I stayed there once. It was solid. I mean, it was nice, but it's not the Grand Californian. No. Have you stayed there?
At the Grand Californian?
Yeah.
No, I have not. Not yet. I mean, I've only done one trip out west for that, and we did stay at the Disneyland Hotel, and absolutely had a blast there. I mean, the room was just fantastic, and what really made it was that we were kind of like on the third or fourth floor facing the pool, and so the funny part is that we had the blinds open, the curtain open, and so my wife woke up and she was able to see the cool monorail pool like type of slide area. And my wife is the biggest monorail nut that you can possibly imagine. So for her to be able to wake up and look at the monorail pool, that just made the trip. I'm sure. So, but yeah, I do want to stay at the Grand Californian sometime in the near future. I do predict that sometime within the next couple of years, I will be heading out west once again for that sort of thing. So we've talked a little bit about how many points you can possibly use up for a particular trip, and the point calculator that's over on your site. Let's talk a little bit about resale, because there are some people that are still kind of on the fence. They don't understand that what is actually involved with not only purchasing a resale contract, but what does it actually get them. And the best way that I've been able to describe it was that before I became a DVC member, I was spending X number of dollars per year just to rent hotel rooms. And for me, because of the types of vacations I had, when I went, where I wanted to stay, it really made financial sense, because I took that money that I was putting into just, getting a hotel room, and I was able to put it towards my membership mortgage. And probably the only thing extra I had to deal with was the maintenance fees. But overall, it was really not that much out. It was actually pretty much a wash. It actually made a lot of sense. Now, taking into consideration the, rates for the hotel rooms have gone up dramatically over the past 10 years, and they continue to go up every single year. What would you probably say to somebody that's interested in renting, scratch that, buying resale? What are some things that they need to consider before starting going down that path?
Well, I'll start with the knock on resale. The main knock on resale is that you don't get all of the perks that DVC offers.
Right.
And the perks are never guaranteed anyway. In the contract that Disney gives you and on their website, it even mentions on there that perks can be taken away at any given time. Do not buy into Disney Vacation Club, expecting that you're going to always get the perks.
Exactly.
So the main thing with DVC, though, as you know, is you're locking into a discounted room at today's rates, and essentially those rates are not going to go up. Maintenance fees are going to go up a little bit, and there was a bigger pop this year for 2019. But if a room is, they can shift points around, as you know. But essentially, if a room costs 10 points now, 30 years from now, that same room is still going to be 10 points.
Right.
So so you're still going to be paying the same amount, where the Disney prices are going up dramatically.
Well,
resale.
Yeah.
Good.
I was going to say, you're right. Even with the annual fees that went up, even for me, it didn't go up. Yes, it went up a chunk, but I still do my calculation of the fact that I am going to stay at Saratoga this year for about almost 10 nights. I think it's 10 nights. And the amount of money that I'm paying in annual fees gives me a deluxe hotel for less than value money.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is a really big draw for me. And I know there are people that were arguing about how much they went up this year, which is very uncommon. But it was just one of those things that happens because there's taxes and other stuff like that. But I'm still getting a great deal. I find it to be a great investment on the room. I can't stress, like you said, you can't buy into this looking at the perks. The perks can always change.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. Even if you're buying through Disney, you're spending all this money.
Hold on one second. Go ahead and try it again. Say it one more time.
Sure. What I was saying is that when you're buying through Disney, even the main thing is the discounts on the room. Are you able to hear me? Okay, just making sure. You get the discounts on the room. They also offer a 10% discount on some merchandise and stuff like that. But it's typically the same discount you can get if you have a Disney Visa card or if you have a Disney annual pass. So there's little perks. Sometimes you can go to one of the Moonlight Magic parties. But the thing you're locking in is, and the most expensive thing, obviously, is those rooms. And whether you're buying directly from Disney or in the resale market, you're getting those same exact rooms, except on resale, it's much, much less. You're locking into, depending on what hotel you buy, because they all have different expirations. It could be 40 or 50 years of Disney Magic for maybe $10,000 cheaper than what Disney charges for the same exact thing as if you walked into their sales center and said, I want to buy into Polynesian or I want to buy into Bay Lake Tower, whatever hotel it is, you're getting that same exact thing, 40 something years of staying at great hotels, but like 10 grand less.
Oh, and it is amazing. If I was to actually have to do it again now, I would go the resale rate. And I realize that, yeah, sure. I wouldn't necessarily get discounts on tickets. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily be able to go to the DVC lounge. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily be able to go to some of the Midnight Magic parties that they have. And I'm going to say okay to that too. And some people are like, are you kidding me? Those things are awesome. I said, yeah, they are. But since they started doing those Midnight Magic type things for DVC members, I've only been able to luck out. And I use that phrase. I've only been able to luck out to go to it once because I'm not necessarily going to change my trip specifically so I can go to get, a free night at a park. It doesn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't make sense. I would love to be a part of that. Trust me. But they just released the dates for a good chunk of the year for the DVC events. Once again, none of them fall in the range of my trip. So there's a perk I, by default, can't really take advantage of. So it's not something that is a big, huge draw. Yes, I get excited when I'm able to go, but I don't count on going.
But even if you have a trip during those times, though, I mean, the way it's going now, it's maybe a 50-50 shot at best that if you're there, the 1 second it opens online, that you're even going to be able to get tickets. Now, we live locally, so we we're able to go to a decent amount of the events, and a lot of times they've been selling out so insanely fast that it's luck of the draw. So I mean, if you're a DVC, if you don't have the blue card, and you happen to be here during that time, and you happen to be lucky enough to get the ticket, then you can go. And then, truthfully, I've gone to a bunch of them, and they're okay. They're really overcrowded. You get some free food, but it's really crowded there normally. And you can't complain when it's free. But if you were paying for it, or if you're sitting there going, I'm buying direct because I really want to go to the parties, you're going to be really disappointed.
Yeah,
Honestly, I've probably gone to 5 parties. They're okay.
Again, it's one of those cases where we went to one of the water parks, and it was a lot of fun. But, it was one of those cases where it's like, I was going to do something that night regardless. And, given my current ticket situation, it wasn't going to cost me any more or any less to go to a park that night. So now I'll go ahead and pop this question up, because I know a few people have asked this question about what are the typical maintenance fees annually. Let me go ahead and I'll start on this if you don't mind. I'd love to hear your 2 cents as well. I have 160 points at Saratoga, and coming up for my annual fees that are going to be due in 2019 is just a shade over $1,000. It's less than $1,100. And there are different places that you can look up to, online as to what the maintenance fees and historical maintenance fees have been for a particular resort. And they're usually pretty accurate, and they do go up a little bit every year. One time I will say it did go down for me, but only by, handful of bucks. Yeah. It was a few pennies. I don't think I could have bought a Happy Meal with it. But generally speaking, those maintenance fees tend to go up on average less than what the increase of a typical room would be. What are some of your experiences with that as well?
No, I mean, that's pretty much the same exact thing. I mean, again, this year, as you know, they had an abnormally high increase. On average, I haven't actually run the numbers, but everything I've always been told was about 3%. That's the magic number that's typically floated out there. They go at about 3% every year. This year was higher, but it's always much, much less than Disney raises their own prices for. And as you know, maintenance fees vary. It was Saratoga Springs had the lowest maintenance fees. Saratoga Springs, unfortunately, as you know, just had a pretty nice jump this year, and now Bay Lake Tower has the lowest maintenance fees. Both of them, I think, are a little under $6 a point.
Right.
Whereas, Vero Beach is over $8 a point. So it really just depends. Each resort has a different maintenance fee. So, I figure if you own 100 points, as we're talking about that example before, your maintenance fees could be, $580 up to, say $850, give or take a little bit. So it can vary, but it's not super dramatic.
Right. And there are two nice things about it. A lot of people pay their maintenance fees on a monthly basis, just to ease into it, make it more affordable on an ongoing basis. I myself, I pay it annually. I mean, I store it myself in my own budget, and I even use my Disney Visa card to pay off my my stuff, which actually works out pretty well. It works out well, and I get my Disney points back with it. Let's see, Scott, are you still there by chance?
Yeah, I'm still here.
There you are. Because for some reason your picture looked like Almost looked like it was a blizzard there where you were at. But you are coming in fine now.
Oh, good.
So, and actually there's a lot of people who are like, hey, Bay Lake Tower rules. Looks like you really got some Bay Lake Tower fans.
I see this. Wow.
And actually, John,
popping up on the screen right now.
John actually said, that people actually do this. They actually use discounted Disney gift cards to pay off their maintenance fees, and which I think is actually pretty cool. Mary does pay hers monthly, which I find nice. And actually, there's like I found out a way to get like a double loop on it, so to speak. You can buy discounted Disney gift cards at like Sam's Club for a small discount. You can use your Disney Rewards Visa to pay for it, so you get certain points for it, and you get the discount as well. You can have some fun with it, but I myself, I hate to make it sound like I'm leaving money on the table, but sometimes it just takes a lot out of a person to play those games. I'm actually
planning on doing a video about that in the next week or so.
Oh, okay.
About the whole Disney gift card thing. So I won't go into it now, but it's funny that you just mentioned it because I was planning on addressing the same exact thing.
Our listener friend Marissa also mentions, hey, if you really want to stay at a specific resort that doesn't have any contracts available, is it better to buy at a different resort or to wait? Is there any resort that's not worth buying into because it's just flat out too expensive? That's a really interesting question. What's your take on waiting or buying now something or waiting to get your choice resort?
It's a tough one. I mean, normally there's a decent amount of contracts out there. There's a couple that are always a little tougher to get in. Grand Californian and Beach Club are always the two that have the least amount of contracts out there. Over the past, I know you said you own at Saratoga Springs. Over the years, I've bought a bunch of times at Saratoga Springs just because it was the best bang for the buck. And I've used my points to stay. I've used those Saratoga Springs points to stay at all of the DVC resorts, and it's great, nice flexibility.
Yeah, same here.
But I'm sure you've seen this over the years, and we deal with it on a daily basis with business. It has been getting harder and harder to get into some of the smaller resorts, and like we've had issues recently. 11-month window exactly. Standard View at Boardwalk selling out, Boardwalk View at Boardwalk selling out. A couple of the Animal Kingdom rooms are selling out. So it has gotten a little bit tougher. So if you know that there's literally one specific resort that's the one you want and you want to stay at, I would highly recommend waiting and buying there. If you're relatively flexible, I mean, Bay Lake, both Bay Lake Tower, Animal Kingdom, Saratoga Springs are typically all considered like your best bang for the buck options. Somewhat lower buy-in prices, lower maintenance fees for Saratoga and Bay Lake Tower, and later expirations, which is really nice as well. But yeah, if there's somewhere you want to stay, if you say I want to be at Beach Club, most of the time, or Grand Floridian or something, it's probably best to wait to get the contract that you want instead of just trying to buy something just to get into it.
I think that makes a really good point. I mean, we bought Saratoga because at that time, like you said, it was the lowest maintenance fees. So I was trying to deal with the lowest cost of ownership overall. And to be honest, out of the past 11 years that I've been a member, we've stayed at Saratoga the fewest number of times.
Same here.
It's just one of those things. But I also want to bring this up because I think other people are saying this too. I'm like Mary. I make my reservations at the exact opening at 11 months. So I'm always making my main reservation for my trips at the 11-month mark at Saratoga Springs. So I have lock it in. I know that no matter what happens, I've got something. And then we try to move it if we want to do so, which I think also, swinging back over to the rental part a little bit, I think people need to understand that significance as well. Because if they want to stay somewhere and they want to book, well, let me ask you this. What do you recommend in the sense of time from a person wanting to rent points? Are you asking customers, especially returning customers, consider 11 months out and trying to match them up with an owner that knows that they're not going to use their points and rent them out? Or are you thinking 7 months is still okay? Because I'm with you. Sometimes the availability is a little bit iffy these days, especially during the busy times.
Absolutely. I would definitely, we tell everybody, because there are other companies that charge you more if you want to book more than 7 months in advance. We don't do that. So whether you contact us 6 months in advance or 11 months in advance, it's always the same rate. So the more time you give us, the better chance you have of getting what you really want. So there's no reason not to plan out far in advance or to try to book it that far out. Definitely do it. There's no reason to wait.
I'm glad to hear that. And that's kind of the way I think as well. And I know some people are like, oh, it just takes too much time to work that out now, and I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. And okay, fine. Yeah. But I know that to lock something in 11 months is definitely something that I like to do. If I want to change it, I change it. If I want to stay somewhere else and I don't get into it, oh well. I mean, it took me like 4 years after Bay Lake Tower opened before I was finally able to get into it. And it wasn't this past summer, it was the summer before that I finally got into the Grand Floridian, which I will tell you this. Oh, man, if I was able to add on points, I would probably add on to the Grand Floridian. I so enjoyed my stay there. It was such a beautiful resort, just an absolutely gargantuously beautiful resort.
Rooms are really nice there too.
They are
really nice.
They are. And it just oozes luxury. I don't know if luxury could be oozed, but it's one of those things. We're kind of getting up to the top of our hour. Let me throw out a few other questions that kind of span the gamut of things. John actually asks, what's your opinion about what do you think Disney will do when contract's life expires in the next 20 to 30 years? And I've seen this question doesn't come up often in some of the discussion groups online, etc. But I know it's something that people think about. What's your take?
It's again that's I'm getting the tough questions today. It's a fantastic question, and it gets asked. It gets asked a decent amount. Truthfully, the people who are kind of like in the know ask that question because they're thinking about that. And as you probably know, several years ago, Disney decided to extend Old Key West and give Old Key West owners the option to extend their contracts to 2057.
Right.
And it didn't go well. Most people felt that they charged too much for it, so not a lot of people actually extended the contracts. So nobody's really sure exactly what Disney's going to do. I mean, there's a chance they could maybe always extend the contracts. There's a chance that they could just say, that's the end of it. They expire. DVC does really well for them, so I can't imagine they're just going to say, okay, just as an example, Beach Club expires in 2042. No more DVC. We're not doing it. They're all regular rooms again. I can't see them doing that. So I'm guessing possibly an extension, or truthfully, because Disney can do whatever they want. They might just say, we're going to start over, brand new, 50 years out, do it again, offering Beach Club at $300 a point.
Yeah.
So nobody knows what's going to happen. Anybody can guess, but again, they've tried the extension thing. It didn't work as well as planned. So maybe they'll go that route again. Maybe they'll just say, start it from scratch. But I can't imagine they're going to get rid of it. It does well for them.
The interesting part to it is that someone asked me, what would you do if Disney offered you an extension? And I said, I'm going to be really honest. By the time my Saratoga contract expires, I'm going to be like,
we're going to be older.
I'm going to be like 75. Okay. And, the fact of the matter is that while I still have every intent in the world of going to Disney in my senior years, my golden years, the fact of the matter is that I predict that my family, my daughter and my son, and in the future, their families, would probably be the ones using those contracts till they expire. I actually plan on, becoming a Floridian 10 11 years from now, after my son is out of college and he's on his own, and it'll be time for my wife and I to start considering retirement and downsizing and the whole shot like that. And, I would love to be able to extend it. I thought about it too. John actually makes a really good way of putting it. I view it as a legacy. If I could extend it, might be a very good deal. It might be something to pass on to my kids in such a way. But at this moment in time, first off, I hope I make it to 75. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't know what kind of situation we're going to be at then. Yeah. And, I think it's plenty of time for me as an owner to own it. And Disney really hasn't said anything about what they're going to do about it. I'm sure that if DVC makes some sort of stance for the next resort, I'm sure they'll be open about it. And I'm sure that the discussions will ensue accordingly across the different discussion boards. Alrighty, well, we are at the top. I'll guess as we kind of come to a close, what kind of words of wisdom would you be able to give our listeners tonight when it comes to either renting DVC points for their next vacation, or what should they consider? What should they do if they want to contact you to talk about possibly even becoming a member through the rental market or the resale market?
Well, if you're looking to become a DVC member, you can always reach us. We're at buyandsell.dvc.com. Again, our real estate broker is Bea Thaxton. She's very good. Everything's on the website. We have a resales group. You can search for Disney Vacation Club DVC resales, and you can find us on there. On the rental side, we're DVC-rental.com. If you plan on going to Disney, please, I feel like the word's not getting out fast enough, surprisingly. Look into rentals. You're going to be able to get a lot better room than what you're used to for the same price, or possibly even less. And if you're able to purchase DVC, a lot of people aren't in the position that they're ready to purchase DVC, and that's most DVC members. One thing that bothers them is they sit there and they go, I wish I had bought earlier, but you have to do it when it's the right situation for you and your family. I sit there, man, I looked at it 5 years earlier. If I had bought it earlier, I would have had more. I would have spent less on vacations. I would have been locked in earlier. I would have had better vacations earlier. But I wasn't in the financial situation for it. So you have to do it when it's best for you. But definitely look into it. There's never any pressure. Again, you don't have to even interact with us. You can always go to the website and click on the point calculator, and it'll tell you what it costs. There's never a hard pitch from us or anything. Again, you can just go on the website and just price whatever the heck you want. And then if you find something, you go, man, this really is a good deal. Then you contact us and see if it's available. So there's never any pressure or anything. But look into renting points, because truthfully, once people rent through us, they don't go back. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll go to another company for some reason. You never know. But most people don't sit there, rent points, and say, you know what? I'm not renting points again. I'm going back to booking directly through Disney. So definitely look into it, because I've told people over the years. Again, there's no hard sell. There's no need to do a hard sell. There's a great savings there, and once you see it, you're never going to want to do it differently.
Absolutely. I totally agree. It's one of those things, as I said, renting that one time got me hooked on the idea. I then had to wait a little bit until I was able to financially afford DVC. The interesting part is that from the first time that I actually considered buying into DVC, and when I actually did, the price went up by $4,000. And back then, that was when points were under $100 a point from Disney, and I kind of kicked myself in the butt. But you know what? I couldn't do it, and finally we pulled the trigger and did it. And I got to tell you, my only regret becoming a DVC member is not doing it sooner. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and close here. I'm gonna go ahead and put you in our green room. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really do appreciate it. And everybody, I'll just let you know, I know there's probably some questions that we didn't get to in the comment section, and I will definitely make sure that both Scott and myself would be able to answer them sometime over the next 24 hours. But we really do appreciate everybody that joined in for our conversation this evening. Scott, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, listen, taking into consideration that we've had some technical difficulties, you guys are just awesome hanging out with us this entire time. So I'm going to press a button here, and you're going to hear this. You heard the show, and we hope you want more. Well, feel free to join us over at our social media platforms. Instagram and our Facebook page can be found at Behind the Ears Podcast. Our webpage is behindtheearspodcast.net, and our email is behindtheearspodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @BehindTheEarsPC. And come and join the conversation about all things Disney over at the WDW community page. Don't forget to rate and review the show over at iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as it really helps us get the word out about the show. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or the Podbean app. Also, you can listen to us on Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and via Alexa and Google Home. All right, everybody. Hey, listen, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Love the conversation going on. You guys are the most, the most understanding, most interactive, most tolerant audience in the absolute world. We love you guys, and we thank you so much for joining us. Uncle Danny will be back as soon as he possibly can. He and I do try to communicate with one another as to when he'll be able to join. As you know, the holidays are really, really tough time for him, mainly because of his line of work, but that's okay. We kind of knew this was going in, and that's actually pretty good for you, because that means we're going to have more special guests, more special features, just like tonight over here at our Feature Thursday event. So with that being said, we thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to talk to you again. But until next time, we hope you have an absolutely magical day. Take care.